Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to be doing another tutorial today regarding a subject observer design pattern in C Sharp, which I find actually to be a pretty cool technique because it allows you to actually pass data easily between classes within a project without having to need a reference of the class that you want to pass data to. So it's quite simple actually. You just got to set up a class. In this example, I'll be doing this as the observable object, and then every other class that you want to pass the data around and see the data will have to be subscribed to that object. So I'm going to continue on right now, guys, and I'm going to be creating these files file by file. I'll be creating these variables here for classes that I have not yet created in this tutorial. So if you see that I'm typing and stuff being already marked as an error by the GUI, please do not feel alarmed. Those will get resolved as soon as I create the other CS classes uh, throughout this tutorial. So let me just go ahead and start, and a matter of fact, just to save everybody time, I'm going to pause it and come back as soon as I finish typing up this class. Okay, see you soon. Okay guys, welcome back. Here I finished typing up this first file over here, and as I mentioned, I'm creating a lot of variables and instantiating them for classes I haven't created yet. And I guess just to make it a little bit more bearable to see, I will start creating some of these classes right now. And actually, before I even get to that, let me just kind of briefly explain what's happening here. You can see over here, I'm creating 4 different objects here. 4 of these will be the different classes I'm going to create. Traffic counter here, this is going to be the observable application that's going to be used to actually pass data between classes. Form 1 here is actually going to be the Windows Form application, because the type of demo I'm going to do is to have a very simplistic GUI where a user can enter in data into a rich text box, and then there will be a submit button, basically simulating the act of the user sending data, uh, just sending data basically. So it's not really going anywhere, that data, but the purpose of that is that when you click that button, it's going to pass the object into the observable queue, which is then going to send that data to all the other classes that are actually subscribed to it. And the other classes that are going to be subscribed to it is a class I'm going to call email notification and file logger. And the purpose of these is, again, is just when the user actually presses enter on the rich text box, it's going to go to both of these classes, and each one's going to handle them accordingly. I'm not going to make any of these classes super special, but this email notification class is supposed to just signify code that's going to take that user input and just email it to somebody. And this file logger is going to take that same input also and just write to a log file. So I'm not going to have too much content within each of those classes, but I just wanted to create them to actually have them subscribe to the class, so you can see how passing data from one class gets caught by others, even though none of those classes have a reference to each other. So there's that. And you can see here I instantiate the observable class first. I'm going to create the method initialization complete, which basically starts a thread for it to consistently listen for any data that's going to be thrown into it, or I should say posted to it. And all these other classes are going to be instantiated with the object thandler passed in as a parameter, which will allow it to subscribe to it and to actually allow each of these classes to throw data itself. Now, I know typically for a subject observer pattern, you don't want to have this. In most examples you see online, you won't really see this happening, but I think this is a very unique and I would say honestly efficient way for passing data back and forth, because by passing the observable object to the other classes, you allow those other classes to actually pass data to one another themselves. So, okay, enough of that. Let me go ahead and just create these classes real quick. We do traffic handler class. I'm going to do the Windows form class. What is the last one? File logger. So you can see I created all the classes that are referenced here. There's still issues here, and I'm going to go ahead and just handle them one by one. The type or namespace traffic handler. Did I misspell it? And I did. I should take care of that. And one thing I forgot to mention is that at the end of this start GUI class or method, I'm going to be running the new form, or should I say the Windows form application, as this is a standard way to actually kick it off if you have the project set up as a console application. Or even if you have it set up as a Windows application, this is the actual code as part of the start method to actually launch it. So let me just continue on, and I'm going to go straight to the traffic handler class, which is going to be the one that's going to allow all of this magic to happen. So if you bear with me 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fill in some stuff first, just so I don't waste too much time here trying to type out everything out, and I'll come back and explain some things, okay? Okay guys, I'm done typing this out, and just kind of a quick overview of what I've actually did. You'll notice that I actually made this class public, and the reason why I did so is that the calling class that's actually instantiating this object can reference the constructor of this class here. And you can see here that I actually did the extending or inheritance of the IObservable object with the type of it being an object. I'm just making it a generic object so that way we can pass any kind of data that we want to. We can pass it strings, other classes, ints. So by just leaving it as such, we're able to do that. Although in this demonstration I won't be passing multiple types of data, I'll just be sending strings, but I left it as an object just so you guys can continue on with this tutorial and make it send anything that you guys wanted to send. So this constructor here is pretty self-explanatory. I'm just instantiating the two lists that I have over here. One of them is going to be the list of observers, other classes that are going to be listening to this object, and the other variable is basically a queue, and this is going to be the string data that's going to be passed back and forth between classes within this application. So there's nothing special there. Um, you'll see I have this other class here called subscribe class, and if any of you actually looked up the subject observer design pattern on the internet with C#, Microsoft MSDN website actually has a tutorial on it and has some of the source code to actually create the subject observer pattern. And basically a lot of what they have on their website is pretty much letter for letter what I've written out over here. So if you see that this is somewhat familiar, it is because of that. But kind of as I was saying, that the subscribe class or method is going to be the method that allows another class to subscribe to this object. So if the observing class is actually part of the list or not part of the list, it'll be added. If it isn't part of the list, or if it already is, excuse me, it will not be added again to avoid duplicates. And then by the tutorial on the Microsoft MSDN website, it has it returning a new unsubscriber class, which allows it to actually remove an observer from the list through the use of this design pattern. So just to kind of continue on, I added this method. This method is not part of the website tutorial from Microsoft. This public void add to queue will allow all the other classes who take in this parameter, this traffic handler object as a parameter, if they store that to a local variable of the same type, they will be able to invoke the add to queue class, which will allow them to pass strings or any other types of objects, which will then put it into the queue list. I have this initialization complete method, whereas you recall you saw that in the main or the program CS file. This basically kicks off a new thread over here, which basically just waits. And since it's been done on a new thread, I have it pretty much running forever as long as the application is still running. And what it'll do is just basically wait. When you start the application and there's no classes that throw an event, it's just basically going to cycle through this while loop where if the count or the size equals 0, it'll just do a thread sleep. If you don't do a thread sleep of at least 1 here, you'll see that your CPU usage skyrockets. So just having a thread sleep of 1 will be enough to counter that. And when somebody posts an object to this waiting list, it'll then follow down or drop down to this if statement, where if it's greater than 0, the size of the object queue list, it'll then basically take the object from the queue and then iterate through the list of observers in its observer list, and then call this onNext method, which basically is the method that allows it to be for the object to be published to every class subscribed. You look further down, again this is actually word from word, letter from letter from the tutorial on the Microsoft site. This is basically just the syntax of how to define your subscriber class to basically remove a class from being part of the subscription list. So with that said, I'm going to continue on to the next class, which is going to be the form. And just as I mentioned before, I'm just going to pretty much, well, I won't skip this one. I'm just going to go ahead and do it real quick. I'm going to add a rich text box and a button, just a simple button. We're not going to dwell on this too much, so I'm not going to even change the type of the variable name of these two GUI objects that I just created here. What I will do though is just double click within that to create this button one click method, and from here I'm going to go ahead and pause it again while I actually just jot down everything so we don't waste too much time here, okay? And I'll see you back in a little bit. Okay guys, welcome back. Here's the form 1 class complete. As you can see, I have it extending the IObserver class, which will allow this to be part of the list of observers from the traffic handler class. And by default, when you create a form or just any class, it comes with the default constructor. I created an overloaded constructor that takes the traffic handler as an object, and as you can see, I also created a local variable of that's originally set to null. The reason why I set it to null is that I only want to have one instantiation of the traffic handler, which is going to be done in the original program CS class. As you see over here, this is going to be the only place where it's going to be instantiated. And let me just kind of fix this for a second. I think it's just a spelling or a case issue. And then this is going to be passed into the form constructor, which by default, when this is created, when you create a new form application, it instantiates a new form with nothing passed through. But since I created that overloaded constructor, you can see that it takes an object of traffic handler. So it'll receive that, it'll instantiate, or it'll set this new traffic handler object, or I should say it shall set this traffic handler object to the instantiated one passed in through main. It's going to call the initialize component, which initializes all of the GUI components of this Windows form. And then if you recall, there's the subscribe method that takes a type of IObserver class, and since this class inherits IObserver, this is an acceptable class to be passed into the subscribe method. So now we'll be able to actually listen to any events or objects posted through the queue. And then if you recall, I have this one button here that when you double click, it automatically creates the button one click event, and it'll take any data that's inside the rich text box field, convert it to a string, or I should say it's returned as a string, and I'm going to post that to the object list queue of the traffic handler class. And the following methods here are actually automatically generated. This onCompleted, onError, and onNext of type IObserver are, you can type it out yourself, but when you actually create this or say inherit this class, there's usually a little thing icon here that you can double click or just single click, and it'll just ask you to implement these methods. If you click on it, it'll generate these automatically. I for now just comment out these new exceptions, and for this tutorial I'm not going to really fill anything in for this class itself, but this onCompleted method basically is the case when the traffic handler itself, you can program when you want it to stop sending objects through the queue, which will be published to other classes that are listening. you can basically tell it to just stop doing it, and this will notify other components, or I should say other projects or CS files, that it's happening, so they know how to handle the case of when they're not going to be receiving objects anymore. The on error is for any error cases, exceptions that occur during the actual traffic handler execution of code. You can allow the other CS classes the opportunity to actually just handle any error conditions that they may want to handle. And the on next here again is an important one. This is basically within a traffic counter. You'll see here this method that's going to be spun off on a new thread. It's going to iterate pretty much infinitely until there's an object within the list. When it does, it's going to take it out of that wait list and then just call the onNext method for every observer within observables list. So having this method here will allow this class to capture anything that any other class sends, and basically through this architecture it will allow it to capture its own object that it passes into the wait list. So okay, I think that's pretty much it for this class. Now I'm going to move on to the next class, which is going to be the file logger. Yeah, it's the file logger. And I'm just going to kind of type things out right now, guys. I'm not going to skip over it. I'm going to just kind of do it out so you guys can see just things happening as I go along. So I want this to also receive objects when it's passed through from the form class when the user types in something and presses enter. I'm going to go ahead and create two local variables, traffic handler object, and again I'm going to set this to null, and I'm going to create the string builder object because this is going to be used to capture the data from the objects that are passed through when the operator selects enter on that Windows Form GUI. And I'm just going to call the variable string builder. Okay. Here's the thing I was telling you about, that if you just kind of click open and you'll see two different things here. Either one basically does the exact same thing. So here are these methods that we saw in the form class, and for now I'm just going to comment out the actual throw new exceptions. I don't want it to do that. So the purpose of this class is going to be to receive data through the object wait list queue or the object list queue, and basically just write it to a file. Again, it's going to be a very simplistic demo, so you're not going to see anything outstanding here, but just for everyone to see that this stuff actually happens, I'm going to actually write this console line piece of code that basically just says, I'm just going to print out to the screen that this class received an object. And I'm going to cast the object value to string. Since I know that's the only thing I'm going to be passing through, I don't have to worry about getting some sort of class cast exception. And what I'm going to do here is just going to write everything that comes into this class to just a simple file here, temp log.txt. And then I'm just going to clear out the string builder object. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for this class. Again, very simplistic, but that's the goal of this. Simple examples are easier to follow. The next class, and I think the last class I'm going to be doing, is this email notification class. And this one, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and pause and just kind of bring it or start up again once I have this class coded up, okay? Okay guys, I'm done with this now. So you can see over here that this email notification class, just like the other two classes, will have a local variable of type traffic handler set to null. It's going to be instantiated when in the main class it actually passes in the instantiated object of traffic handler as a parameter to this class, at which point then this class will subscribe to the traffic handler. And just as I did in another class, I clicked on this object here, which brought down a pull down menu where I auto selected, or I selected on the object there to auto complete this class with these implemented methods. So I commented out the exceptions, and as you can see here, I created another let's just say I didn't create another, but in the onNext method I actually created some extra code here. And I'm not really going to show this happen just because I'm not putting in a real email address over here. But what's going to happen is that when the user clicks enter here, it's going to get caught here. You're going to see this line printed out. It's going to cast the data to a string, set it here, and I'm creating the necessary objects to create an email message to be sent. And again, I'm not using anyone's real email address or password, but if you wanted to do something similar, this is what you would have to do. So just to avoid any exceptions occurring while I actually run this as a demo, I'm just going to go ahead and comment this out. Not that the exception will cause anything to crash, because it's going to be handled within this try catch, but I just wanted you guys to see things happen cleanly on the console window. Oh, an issue here. Forgot to space that out. Should take care of that. Okay. Complain that that's never used, and it is correct. Basically doing an anonymous instantiation here, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's go ahead, and since this is a console application, it by default brings this up. And since I created these lines of code over here, it actually brings up this box over here. And say I'm a user just typing in hello. I'm going to click button 1. Nothing happens right away that you see, but you do see on the console the actual 2 lines printed out where the email notification class received the data object and the file logger class also received the data object. And if you wanted to go ahead and just kind of put a breakpoint there, you can kind of see things happen as they happen. So I'll just put it there, and I'll put another one here. Let me just continue writing. Nice to meet you. Click enter or on the button. You'll see that it's going to be caught here in the onNext method, and there's the line that I received the object. And you can see here, as I'm casting the value, you can see here it says hello, nice to meet you. Although I'm not doing anything with that data in this method, you can see it being caught there. If I click continue, you'll see it being caught in the next observer class, which is a file logger. It received, or I should say, it gets to this line here. It actually does something with the object, and I'm currently writing it to a temp log file, and then cleaning out the string builder object itself. And just to show you the contents of that log file, I'm going to go over here to Windows Explorer, going into the project directory, to the release folder. You'll see the temp log file here, the same one that I actually referenced over here. And you'll see this weird thing happening. Hello, hello, nice to meet you. The reason why it looks weird like this is because I'm always appending to the file, so I'm never cleaning out completely the file every single time I press enter on that button. And if you remember, I wrote out hello, enter, and then created this file, wrote hello, and then I added to the text box saying nice to meet you, and string builder object that I have there takes this all and then appends it to the currently existing file, which already contained the word hello, and that's the reason why it looks a little funny like this. But that's pretty much the demo right there, guys. Hopefully it was helpful, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.